Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of What's Up Doc. I'm your host, Dr. Aalia Al-Barwani, and I'm a board certified physician. My show, What's Up Doc, is a production of Muslim Network TV, the only Muslim focused network broadcasting in North America. You can stream our shows 24/7 on our website at muslimnetwork.tv, as well as on our YouTube page at youtube.com/Muslim Network TV. You can also find our shows streaming on Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, and Galaxy 19. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about autism. Autism is a topic that is often misunderstood by both the medical and the non-medical community. Joining us in that discussion is Dr. Afroze Hai. Dr. Hai has been a pediatrician for over 24 years and is a fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics. She trained in India and then completed her residency at Michigan State. She eventually moved to Houston and is currently working at Healthy Horizons Clinic in Pasadena. Dr. Hai loves her role in taking care of children's physical and mental health. Welcome, Dr. Hai. It's a pleasure to have you on our show today.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Al-Barwani. Thank you for what you're doing. I think this is a great idea. Autism, like you mentioned, is very misunderstood, and I'm here to clear some of those misconceptions and give everyone some more information.
Excellent. And this is right on time. As you shared with us before we started recording, April is Autism Awareness Month, and April 2nd, I think you said, was Autism Day. And so this is just the right time to be talking about this, and I'm really excited because it is a topic that I've always been interested in. I do see patients with autism, and I feel like we just don't know as a society, not just in the medical community, but outside of it as well, how to properly help support people who have autism. So I'm really excited for today's episode as well.
I am too.
So let's start off by really just describing, let's talk about how common this is. And then we'll talk about what exactly is part of this autism, because in more recent years, we started using the term autism spectrum disorder. So I'd love us to talk about first how common this is in our community in the US, and then talk about what it entails.
Okay, so the prevalence is becoming more and more common, the prevalence of autism, whether it's actually a real increase or whether we are diagnosing it more because we are more aware. It's a combination of both of those things. Right now, the prevalence is 1 in 44, so it's not that uncommon at all. I mean, if you have 100 patients, then 100 kids, then 2 of them will be diagnosed with autism. It's as common as that now.
Wow.
So it occurs all through all kinds of racial groups, ethnicities. It's prevalent everywhere, all socioeconomic classes. The one demographic that stands out is it is 4 times more common in boys than in girls. Even though it's not that uncommon in girls as well, but boys tend to outnumber girls as far as the the diagnosis of autism goes.
Very interesting. Yes. When we were talking as well before we started recording, I was sharing some older statistic where they were saying 1 in, I believe, 59, and then you said it gets updated every 4 months, and most recently 1 in 44, which I think, as you said, is a combination of both us being more aware and detecting it, as opposed to something that's going on that may be just causing a higher number of people to have this condition. So it's important to bring that up. Now, let's talk about what are the symptoms for autism, and what does it mean when we say autism spectrum disorder?
So autism spectrum disorder, it's a term that is used to describe a range of conditions, and these are characterized by challenges in social, communication, and behavior skills. Okay, so it's not just one characteristic or 2, it's a combination of several of these social challenges, communication problems, and behavior problems that we see in these kids. Previously, there were terms that were used like for example, Asperger syndrome, pervasive developmental disorder, autistic disorder, but they are now under one umbrella, and that is autistic spectrum. It's called a spectrum because different patients, different kids will have different strengths and challenges. For example, not all of them will have the social problems, not all of them will have communication issues, and not all of them will have the typical behavior problems that we see. So it's like a spectrum, meaning like there's varying degrees of limitations. So right now we classify it according to the degree of disability. For example, level 1 autism, level 1 autistic spectrum disorder, they are able to do most of their life skills, or they need a little bit of support. Level 2, they need a little bit more support, and level 3, they have more serious challenges. They need a lot more support with their activities of daily living, with communication, and so forth. So right now we call level 1, 2, and 3. And the terms that were used in the past, for example, Asperger syndrome, it was described by Austrian pediatrician in 1944. And that is used for the more highly functional autistic kids. So these kids, they are socially awkward, they are awkward at making conversations, and their communication skills might not be that great, but their cognitive abilities are what we call normal, and they do not need the support that the kids with the more severe kinds of autistic spectrum disorder need. So these terms are being replaced by one term, and that is autistic spectrum disorder. Okay, so in addition to the social, communication, and behavior problems I mentioned, autism is also accompanied by other sensory sensitivities, for example, being extremely sensitive to noise or, smells and light, and sometimes medical issues like not ADHD, but medical issues like GI problems and mental health problems like ADHD, neurological problems like epilepsy as well. Okay, so it's a broad definition. It's a spectrum, and I will come to the signs and symptoms soon. Sorry, you were saying?
Yes, no, please continue.
So when we come to the social issues, what kind of social issues do they have? The first thing is...
Sorry, I didn't realize you were going to move on. I just want to summarize. Essentially what I'm hearing is that we call it a spectrum. This is a newer term to kind of encompass some of what we were seeing before, where there isn't just one particular presentation for somebody with autism. Previously, like you said, there was a different category depending on the severity, but we are seeing that because it's kind of a spectrum, essentially, you have levels, so to speak. And so now, instead of just kind of categorizing it by the old definition, we're now addressing the fact that there are different levels, or there's a spectrum to the symptoms, and anybody could be on one end of it, where you mentioned like Asperger's is now part of that spectrum, and then people are people who have more severe disability. So I love that you explained that, and then let's talk about some of the signs and symptoms, because I think that'll help us to kind of put all of it together and understand what you mean now by the severity, right? Like, what is severe? So let's talk about those signs and symptoms.
Yes, definitely. So coming to the signs and symptoms, this is the most common thing I see in my practice. Like, the parents will bring this to my notice first, is the child doesn't smile. There's no social smile. So, when babies are born and they're around 2 or 3 months of age, we expect when parents talk to them that the child talks to them and smiles back, not talks to them like using words, but coos and, has this facial expression of actually interacting with the parent and smiling at the parent. So that is an important, really important milestone in a child's life, and that is missing. One of the parents I remember dad telling me that no matter what, my child will not smile at me. I try to take pictures and make him smile. He will not look at me in the eye. He will not smile at me. So that's like the number one complaint or the number one concern I get from parents. Number two is, again, not responding to any kind of facial expressions or having like a very limited way of expressing themselves. For example, crying a lot, not being able to express happiness, not being able to reciprocate facial expressions. And as they grow a little older, most kids will be interested in what the parents are interested in. For example, if the parent points at something, the child will look at that and be interested in a toy, for example, or in a rattle. So these kids, these social milestones are missing. They're not interested in what the parent is showing them. And as they grow a little bit older, like maybe around 15, 18 months, parents notice that they really don't seem to have any concern about others. They just want to be by themselves. They are just living in their own world. So those are the social milestones that they miss. Then as far as the communication, really lack of any words, any kind of, by the age of 1, most kids will have at least 1 or 2 words with meaning. So these kids will not have any words. And while language delay is common by itself, these kids will also not have any nonverbal communication with parents. For example, a kid who doesn't talk, they will still communicate with their parents by gestures or by pointing, but kids with autism will not be able to do that. So lack of verbal and nonverbal communication is the other important symptom of autism. And the third thing, behavior concerns. We see a lot of abnormal movements. For example, these kids, they like to rock themselves, swaying, spinning, flapping. I see this a lot in the office too, like the spinning and the flapping. And this is called stimming or self-stimulation behavior. So there are theories that these kids do it for soothing themselves, like it's kind of self-stimulation to soothe themselves. So these kind of behaviors, and then they are extremely resistant to any changes in their routine or any changes in the surroundings. So toddlers, they do have a lot of temper tantrums, but kids with autism, this gets very extreme and it lasts beyond the normal age of temper tantrums. For example, it might last till they are like 4 or 5 years old or even older. Okay, so those are the main things that we tell parents about, or the parents bring that to our notice in their well-child visits. And those are the red flags that I look for when I am evaluating a child for autism.
Beautiful. Thank you for breaking that down for us so well. So there are the social interactions, communication, and then behaviors. So those are the 3 kind of categories that you'll see. And then you broke down beautifully, again, the symptoms to kind of look out for. So it's really important, as you said, for parents and even school teachers, if patients are, if the children rather are in kindergarten or pre-K rather, because usually these symptoms can be detected really early, as you described for us. I understand that the typical age is about 2 or 3 is when we start to do, in the office at least, the screening. Around 15, 18 months is when we do the screening for that as medical professionals. But it's really important for parents to pay attention, because usually they know their children much more than, of course, their healthcare or doctors are able to know or understand them. The parents know them better than that. And so when a parent can notice these signs early and bring it to our attention, it's always best, because then we can get ahead of things and help with that diagnosis, I believe. Do you agree with that?
Definitely, yes. So the one take-home message I want to give from this talk today is for parents to learn the signs and act early. Okay, so that's on the CDC website, and this is what they encourage: to learn the signs and act early. There is evidence that early intervention works best, Okay, and as pediatricians, we are trained to recognize these signs early. And when these kids come to my office, any child for that matter, I am always on the lookout for any developmental delays. How are they doing with their milestones? How are they communicating? Because, the younger the child is and the earlier the intervention is, the better the outcome. This is what we've seen in our experience, and this is what evidence-based medicine also shows, that the earlier the intervention, the better it is for the child and for the family.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Hai. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we'll just continue our conversation here and move on with what we do once these signs are identified. So stay tuned. You're watching What's Up, Doc here on Muslim Network TV, and we'll be back after the short break.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. Let 211 be your guiding light for help with food, healthcare, and other resources.
211, how can I help you?
Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211, get connected, get help.
Something more than a birthday is happening here. Once you can see it, you can help. The sooner you recognize the signs of autism, the sooner you can make a lifetime of difference for your child. Start by answering a few simple questions at screenforautism.org.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
A free online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to What's Up, Doc. Today we are joined by Dr. Afroze Hai, and we have been talking about autism and autism spectrum disorders. So before the break, Dr. Hai, we were talking about early signs and the importance of early intervention. So when parents notice signs that might be concerning for autism or other developmental delays, to bring that up to their pediatrician and doctors early. So you have a patient where a parent has brought them into your office with concern for some kind of delay. What are the next steps that you usually take in order to diagnose and then manage somebody with autism spectrum disorder?
Okay, so definitely. When we have parents with concerns, or even for other kids, for every well-child visit, we do something called Ages and Stages Questionnaire, starting at 9 months of age. And this questionnaire, it helps us identify kids who are having any problems with their motor skills, for example, or fine motor skills, or social skills, or language delays. There are like 4 main domains. This is the questionnaire. I can post it on the website. And it helps us identify kids who are at risk. And then we can follow that up with additional screening called MCHAT. And MCHAT is modified checklist for autism in toddlers. And MCHAT is like a set of 20 questions. It's on the CDC website as well. And this specifically asks parents about certain behaviors and certain communication skills or lack of communication skills. So they are very specific questions. It's a list of 20 questions, and parents are supposed to answer those as yes or no. And then if there are yes answers to certain questions, then, definitely we need like a full workup for autism. Some of these kids will also need additional testing, for example, hearing screen if parents suspect that their children have hearing loss, and then speech and language evaluation by a speech therapist. Some of these kids also need like occupational therapy and physical therapy referrals, depending on how their motor skills are. And of course, we refer them also to an autism center for more comprehensive and for more detailed evaluation by developmental pediatricians and by the psychiatrists. My job is to coordinate all these referrals, make sure that the parents are getting the help that they need, and to support the parents to this, and to encourage them to be proactive with their child, be an advocate for the child, keep up with their appointments. When we have a diagnosis of autism, or even before the diagnosis of autism, there is a lot of new territory for parents to navigate. Most of them are not familiar with the insurance paperwork. Most of them are not familiar with all that it takes to, get all the services that they need. It's basically a multidisciplinary approach. So we as pediatricians, my staff, then the parents themselves, and then of course the specialists, we try and coordinate, and we try to get them the help in an easier way, and in a way that's not like wasting their time. And while parents are waiting for this evaluation, I tell them to be more involved with their children, to read to them, to sing to them, to tell them stories. And, kids are absorbing more than what we realize. So keep up that connection with their kids, and, basically to encourage their healthy brain development.
Wonderful. It sounds like you are definitely raising up a community within the healthcare system to help the child to succeed. And I love that you mentioned that there is support given to the parents as well. That's an important point. A lot of parents may feel isolated when they are, just different emotions as well when their child is diagnosed with any condition. And particularly, I think, because of some of the stigma around autism, they may feel particularly so if their child is diagnosed with autism disorder. And so it's really important to educate, like we're doing here in this episode, to really understand, that this isn't something that is negative necessarily, right? There is a spectrum, there is support. And I believe from what I've read that this can evolve. So a child that may be on the more severe side of the spectrum, that this could change over time with services and early intervention, as you mentioned. So understanding what it is and getting help early is really important in the long-term outcome of somebody who might be
Definitely. Definitely. I read a really nice quote that I wanted to share, and it says, for every child with autism, there is a parent that never gives up. So in my practice too, I see that the parents who are really vested in their kids, who take the time and make those appointments, those kids do great. Of course, there are challenges, as with any other chronic condition. There will be ups and downs. But yes, as clinicians, our job is to support them, to make them more aware, to help them advocate for their children. And the CDC website also has a 100-day action toolkit. The first 100 days of any chronic illness, for that matter, can be really rough. It can be tough because, insurance issues, getting to appointments, getting to multiple appointments, that can be really rough. So this action toolkit tells parents what to do on a week-by-week basis so they don't get overwhelmed. I realize it can be very overwhelming. A lot of parents are very anxious about their kids' futures. Will my kid ever be independent? And like you said, yes, it does evolve. We've seen a lot of positive outcomes. So it's very encouraging to know what early intervention can do.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned that it's your job to help coordinate a lot of these services for parents or physicians who may not be aware of the resources that you mentioned that can help support a child with autism. You mentioned the CDC and you mentioned Autism Speaks. Would those be good resources and references for physicians and parents alike, or are there other things that you recommend?
Yes, those are the best ones. I am new to the Houston area and I'm still learning about the autism clinics here, the autism evaluation clinics here. But I know Easter Seals in Houston does a good job. And the same thing with other early intervention programs. If the child is older than 3 years, the public elementary schools help with evaluations. And if the child is older, like school-age kids, they do help with special education services, for example, or IEP, individualized education plans. So these agencies, they help them with getting them the resources that they need. For example, even school-based therapies, like school-based speech therapy, school-based physical therapy, or occupational therapy, which might be more convenient for parents as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's talk about something that is a little bit controversial now as we wrap up the episode. And it has to do with this myth, and that is exactly what it is, surrounding autism and link to vaccine. This movement we saw, I believe, in the early 2000s or a little bit earlier, with different celebrities kind of promoting this, or at least that's when it kind of got more popular because celebrities started promoting this link of autism to certain vaccines, which unfortunately then compounded the movement of parents against vaccines and people becoming against vaccines for potential for these reasons. So let's talk about that and what the evidence, because studies have been done to show. I won't steal your thunder. Please share with us what the information and the studies have shown us.
So yes, it all started with one study in 1998. Wakefield, he was the doctor who published a study in the Lancet, which is like a very prestigious publication, about the link between MMR and autism, MMR vaccine and autism. However, very soon they found out that the study was very flawed, and he actually retracted the study and admitted that it was wrong and wrongfully done. Since then, the CDC has done 7 studies to see if there's any link between autism and MMR and autism and other vaccines. And it has been disproved again and again that there is no link between autism and vaccines. Then there were some other studies that linked autism to thimerosal in vaccines. Thimerosal is a preservative. And again, there were several studies done that again disproved any link between autism and thimerosal or autism and vaccines. So this is, we follow evidence-based medicine. Like, the research shows that there is no such link. In fact, vaccines prevent a lot of diseases that can cause brain damage and that can cause developmental problems. For example, measles, polio, rabies, tetanus, and now even COVID. They've been linked to brain damage. in adults and children as well, and then they can cause a lot of developmental issues in kids. So vaccines prevent a lot of these diseases. So I am a big advocate of vaccines, and I think we are short on time to go into this because once I start, it's hard for me to start talking about vaccines. But definitely there's no link between vaccines and autism. I can send you maybe in the comments the link about the various studies that have been done.
Sure, we'll try to upload that as well on our in our information on our YouTube page for people to follow up on that. But thank you for sharing that. You summarize a lot of useful information in that short amount of time. But I think it's really funny how not funny, but ironic in some cases how you underlined that this study was retracted, not just by the medical community, but the author himself.
It's like the damage has been done and it's hard to undo the damage, but we will try.
Exactly. And it's really funny how, sensational news is usually not the boring stuff, right? If we say something is safe, that's not what makes the headlines, right? Wearing seatbelts is not talked about in the newspapers, but when somebody dies of a car crash, not wearing, or whatever it is, that becomes the headline. In any case, let's now, because we're running out of time, let's talk about how we as a community can help people or children who are either diagnosed with autism or even later in life, because I know our focus today was on in children, but of course this is something that is carried forward. So how do we support people with autism in general?
Definitely. So, the first thing we can do is teach ourselves, teach our families, make them more aware that there is a condition called autism. These are the signs and symptoms. So awareness is the first thing. The second thing is accepting, accepting that not everybody is alike. Now we have the term called neurodiversity, meaning everybody's brains are different. And while kids with autism have challenges, they also have their strengths. So that's the third thing, appreciate that all human beings are different. Teach that to your children who might be in school and who might, unfortunately be part of bullying or treating other people differently. I think it's our job to teach them not to, treat them different, treat kids with autism or any other developmental problems differently. So that's number one, awareness, acceptance, and appreciation of our differences. And then the fourth thing we can do as adults and as a community is advocate for individuals with autism. Like you mentioned, April is Autism Awareness Day, Autism Awareness Month, and April 2nd is Autism Awareness Day. And this was started by the United Nations in 2007. So what we do on April 2nd, we all dress up in blue. That's why I'm dressed in blue. It's called Light It Up Blue. And this is to raise awareness of autism, to give more information to people about autism. Then what else can you do is you can, donate to charities that support autism. You can advocate for special education services in your, Islamic school and charter schools. I know most public schools have the resources they need, but a lot of private schools do not. So I think that's one thing I would like to encourage everybody to advocate for. You can read up about, the contributions made by individuals with autism to the world. For example, recently the climate activist, the Swedish climate activist, Greta Thunberg, she is an individual with autism and she's doing an amazing job. And similarly, there's a long list of people who are contributing in a very positive way. And then so you can read up about them. There are books written by them, written by a lot of people with autism that you can read. There's a Netflix show called Love on the Spectrum. I haven't watched it, but I encourage people to get an insight into what it is to, live in their shoes and to empathize. Also, if there are people in our family, if there are kids or adults in the family who have been diagnosed with autism, to be more accepting of them, to be more empathetic, and to remove the stigma that goes with the diagnosis.
Beautiful. These are really good steps, Dr. Hai. Both practical, definitely practical, which people can follow. And I love that you specifically mentioned in our Muslim community some things that we can do to raise awareness. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate joining us in today to talk about this really important topic right in time for Autism Awareness Month, inshallah. And we wish you every success in your ongoing career.
Really honored. Thank you for having me on the show. Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you for joining us on another episode of What's Up, Doc. You can watch this and our other shows on our website at muslimnetwork.tv, as well as our YouTube page, youtube.com/Muslim Network TV. I'm your host, Dr. Aalia Al-Barwani. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time on another episode of What's Up, Doc.